if everyone could please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we will welcome any citizens who are here today who wish to be heard. Do we have any public comment requests?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
All right. Thank you. We'll close public comment and go on to our recognitions and announcements. And for that, we do have a special one today, a 10-year Staff Service Award.
Yeah, we do. So she loves the spotlight, I know, but everybody interacts with Tina, and I just wanted to recognize Tina. Tina, do you want to come up and say a few words to the board? I guess I have something I need to give you as well. Congratulations. You all know this show would never go on without Tina. So she is really the glue that holds the team together. She gets your agendas prepared. She orchestrates everything. All of our events, she coordinates my meetings. It's an amazing amount of things that she does. She's also assistant to the land use team and coordinates a lot of their activities, and really is just kind of like the mom of the office. And I mean that in a really, really nice way. I don't know everybody's mother's experience, but Tina is fantastic, and I just want to say thank you and congratulations on 10 years, and I'm coming right behind you. You want to say anything before?
I'm not sure I heard Whit right, but I'm pretty sure he said I don't like the limelight, which is true. I sit deliberately off camera, but I have to tell you that I am very thankful to receive this award. And specifically, I'm thankful to the fabulous team that I fondly refer to as my Forward Pinellas family, and to all the board members. I say often that my favorite part of my job is the board. And to Whit's point, I never know what I'm going to be doing any minute of any given day. It is literally, if someone asks me my job and I have to describe it, I say I arrive every day to a room full of bouncing ping pong balls, and my job is to catch as many as I possibly can. That said, I am very fortunate to truly say from the bottom of my heart that I love my job. And when I came here 10 years ago, my intention was to retire out of this place, and it's still my intention today. Thank you.
Congratulations, Tina, and thank you so much for your service. I agree this would be a difficult thing to accomplish here without you. So thanks for all that you do. All right, next we have our consent agenda. Do we have any board members who, with any items that they'd like to pull from the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second. All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
I didn't catch them, I'm sorry.
Albritton?
Eggers, Albritton. The Daves.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we do have for our public hearing items, we have item 6A today, which is the proposed amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program. This item will be covered.
Chelsea has some kids at home who are high fever, so she's watching online.
Right, I understand that Chelsea is with us on Zoom, but in person, we have Ariane Martins to present. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This SIP amendment is for the intersection of Alt 19 at Curlew Road. This project involves widening the road and also widening the approaching lanes, as well as other safety improvements at the intersection. And this project will receive a funding increase of $2.9 million, and we're requesting the board to approve this proposed amendment.
All right, thank you. Any questions? We do have the materials in our backup. Mayor Freeney.
So my question, I guess, since we've got some county commissioners in the room, any news on the bridge?
that's right by the,
No, nothing yet. We're, after the last meeting, a couple meetings ago, I said we've got to get some kind of definitive position on this because we've been given plenty of warning that the bridge is ending its life, but nothing yet. We're pushing it, but nothing yet.
okay.
There is a federal grant on that that's pending, so waiting to see if the county will be awarded.
Okay. No, we hadn't really had a chance to talk about it. I want to bring it up here, but nope, it's good.
Thank you.
Dunedin
Councilmember
Causeway.
Gabbard.
Yeah, Dunedin Causeway Bridge, sorry, I should have been more specific.
Yeah, the quick thing on that, the chances of us being successful in that grant are probably pretty slim, because there's only like 200 residents that live out there. So we're probably, the likelihood of us scoring very highly on that grant is not too good. So we've actually are hoping and asking if FDOT will assume ownership of that road. And Secretary Gwynn has indicated that there's an interest in FDOT's part to do that. Now, he is retiring here in the end of April, I believe. But I brought this up at our delegation meeting, was it a week ago, this past Friday, and asked our legislative delegation members to keep that in the back of their mind and continue to push for that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, if I could ask one more question since we're talking about it. So does the factor of the million people going into the state park factor into that, some of that, or is that the
100%.
reason to strategize
Yeah,
to the state? Okay.
exactly,
great.
yep, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gabbard.
Thank you. So while we're talking about bridges, it's always a companion piece to talk about the San Martin Bridge that the county owns. That project has been kind of languishing for about a decade or so. I know that we're moving forward with some, sort of public input sessions that are coming, but I would just ask my county commission friends to keep that on your radar because that bridge is in very bad disrepair. There's a lot of infrastructure work that we're doing at the city that meets up to that. We are expediting that work on our side, but we need your cooperation on that particular bridge. So just kind of wanted to put a plug in since we're talking about bridges. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Did we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
All right. Thank you. And this will be a roll call vote. So
We already.
at this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the TIP amendments. Could we please have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Fig Sanders? Commissioner Eisner?
Yes.
Mayor Saraki? Yes. Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Councilmember Gabbard?
Yes.
Commissioner Shearer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Albritton?
Aye.
Commissioner Eggers?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed? Commissioner Flowers? Yes. Mayor Freeney?
Aye.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Councilmember Menino? Aye. Councilmember Floyd?
Yes.
Mayor Ayub? Yes. Councilmember Driscoll?
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Next, for the Pinellas Planning Council, we'll move into those public hearings, which will be conducted as follows. We did have one change, so allow me to check that really quick. That is
Madam Chair,
the
if
only
I-
item on the Pinellas Planning Council, and I understand that there was a request by the city of Tarpon Springs to have this item, CB1, continued to the March 12th, 2025 meeting. Tina, do you have some background on that for us?
No, Madam Chair, I just was going to say the same, that yesterday we received a request by the city of Tarpon Springs to continue this case to the March 12th forward Pinellas Board meeting, and we will continue that to that date certain so that we don't have to run our legal ad again.
Okay, thank you. So if we have if we do get a motion for the continuance, is that a roll call vote or a voice vote? Okay, thank you.
Motion to continue to March 12th.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this item, 6B1, case number CW 25-02 for Tarpon Springs to March 12th, 2025. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have our presentation and action items for everyone today. We'll start with our PSTA activities report. And for that, we have Mayor Saraki.
Thank you, Madam
From the great
Chair.
city of Oldsmar and from the PSTA board to present that report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start out by our change in 2025. I am the new chairman of PSTA, and Commissioner Deborah Fix-Sanders is our vice chair. So there we go. Ridership overall on PSTA is up 3% through November from fiscal year 2024, despite PSTA having shut down for several days due to the hurricanes. The Clearwater Ferry launched. The maiden voyage took place on January 31st, and the ferry is now open for business. The ferry is no longer reservation only and will be running an expanded schedule Thursday through Sunday. Adults are $5, seniors and disabled are $2.50. Ferry service will be from downtown Clearwater to Clearwater Beach and will resume to Dunedin once the storm-damaged marina is repaired. The St. Pete Clearwater Airport on-demand grouper service on February 10th, PSTA launched the Grouper, the on-demand shuttle service from St. Pete Clearwater Airport to Clearwater Beach. PSTA has conducted outreach to hotels on Clearwater Beach, and the airport will be posting information on their website as well as signage throughout the airport for passengers. Connected Community Bus Network. The public hearing for the proposed Connected Community Bus Network will be held on February 26th at 9 a.m. at the PSTA Administration Building. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions and view zoomed-in route and frequency maps from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the lobby with coffee and bagels. Please join us to share your feedback. Spring Break Service. Spring Break Service in Clearwater begins March 2nd and runs through May 3rd. The Clearwater Trolley and Suncoast Beach Trolleys will be running extended weekend service until midnight, and service between the downtown Clearwater and the beach is free. PSTA's Jolly Trolley in Dunedin will be operating a parking shuttle to Toronto Blue Jays Spring Training Camp as well. Upcoming events, St. Pete Locotrana, February 22nd, will have free Sunrunner service from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Firestone Grand Prix on February 28th through March 2nd. For more information, visit psta.net/Grand Prix for a discounted fare code. And that's my update, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Does anyone have any questions regarding the PSTA report? All right, thank you. We'll move on to our regional activities report with our Executive Director, Whit Blanton.
Okay, I have a couple of items. I'm going to save one for a little bit later. On the legislative report, I have a couple of items. First, on January 17th, we had a joint meeting of the 3 boards of county commissioners from Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough, which is a fairly rare event, and I know Commissioner Eggers has been pushing for that for a long time, but seems to be getting on track to be more of a regular activity. And I was invited to speak on the potential merger of the 3 MPOs in Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco, and the discussion was really good. I covered where we are in the process, which, just to let you know, today, the RFP for management legal consultant was released, so it's been put out on the street. We expect about a 6-week period for consultants to be able to respond, and then we should be bringing a recommendation for a selection to the TMA leadership group for their review in May. And then ideally, we'll be underway shortly thereafter, within a month or 2 of that. So by summer, we will have somebody assisting our staff to work through the financial, staffing, management, legal, organizational issues, question of whether the agency would be independent or hosted, as all 3 MPOs currently are hosted by a local government, and just work through some of those details. So that is a major step forward. And the discussion generally was supportive of the process and the effort. We did get some questions from some board members who asked some very good questions about how will this increase, say, the efficiency of our transportation planning activities? Will it result in fewer organizations? Will it save money? We've got questions about will local governments be lost in the shuffle as we focus on regional activities, and how we ensure that that doesn't happen. There were some other comments and questions related to our ability to compete for discretionary funding. And, the landscape is changing in Washington. It's probably changing to a degree in Tallahassee, too. And we just need to make sure that our organization is nimble and able to do that. In your packet, I'm not going to give the presentation, but there is the same PowerPoint presentation that I shared on that day, on the 17th. And I also shared it yesterday in Tallahassee with the Florida Senate Transportation Committee. I'll cover that in a little bit under the legislative item. So I'll open it up to see if there are any questions on regional activities, but I feel like the process is moving well, and if any of the county commissioners who are there would like to add to the comments, welcome that.
Vice Chair Eggers.
The only thing I'd comment on, and I know that there was some interest in potentially getting a representative from the major cities joining us in the future. This is something we've been trying to get started for, well, since I've been on the commission, and unfortunately with the previous administration, it wasn't so well received, but we've been doing it now for 3 years. I think it's been really good. We're probably going to have 3 this year, and I think we've kind of gotten on our feet now, and we feel it's maybe time to bring in a representative from St. Petersburg, from the city of Tampa, and maybe from one of the cities in the county. But I know that's a work in progress. So anyway, it was a good meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions or comments on this, the regional activities report? Commissioner Scherer.
Yes, Chair, thank you. A question for you. I read after the 1990 census, the governor wanted us to combine our MPOs. Which governor?
I think that was Lawton Childs, maybe?
Lawton Childs,
Yeah.
Walkin' Lawton? Okay. And is our current governor asking us to combine our MPOs?
Unlike that year, the Florida Department of Transportation has not sent a letter requesting that we merge, but that has happened a couple of times after the census. So I think it was 90, and then again in 2000, and probably again in 2010. But this year we didn't get that same letter, possibly because they felt like we were on a path, or the conversation was moving forward. But the letter comes from the DOT, but it really is driven by the governor's office.
Okay.
I think there is support, and clearly there's support in the legislature because they passed the bill in 2023 requiring us to prepare the feasibility report that we submitted at the end of 23.
Okay. I'm the new guy here on this, and this whole idea makes me a little nervous. For the record, first of all, we're just talking about transportation, not land use and zoning, right? Okay. On the transportation, I'm nervous about people in Hillsborough County and Pasco County deciding what the focus should be for our spending on our roads in Pinellas County. That makes me very nervous. Pasco County and especially Hillsborough County are going to be larger than us someday. They're growing in wealth and they're growing in influence in Tallahassee. And I see this as a problem for our roads. I mean, do we really want the major employers in Hillsborough County that own gigantic industrial areas deciding what transportation is going to feed our industrial areas? Do we want the people, the vested interests in downtown Tampa deciding what kind of access St. Petersburg are going to have to the interstate or downtown Clearwater? It makes me nervous. It gives me pause. Also, I think I read that the board was proposed to be 25 members. These large boards, our citizens get confused about who's making decisions and who to hold accountable. And a board that size, that's covering a whole region, makes it unaccountable. And so those would be my, that makes me nervous about this whole plan. Just so everybody knows. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer and, you know, throw water on it. I'm just saying, I'm new and it makes me nervous. Thank you.
If I can just respond briefly, I think you raise good questions and issues that I have heard from others. And I want to be clear to everybody who's watching or listening to my words that we are not rushing into anything. This has taken quite a while. We're trying to put the best structure together so that those potential issues can't happen. And there are structural ways to do that. And we'll explore that. And that's a big part of why this management legal consultant is so important. And if the end of that process, we haven't convinced a sufficient number of elected officials who represent 75% of the urban area population that this is a good idea, it won't happen.
Maybe I just ran just a crazy idea. Maybe we could start with something small, like having a joint tri-county area MPO look at the major east-west corridors. Give them the ability to start and see how it works, you know, give them a certain limitation to what they can get together and decide unilaterally for all three counties. I mean, we don't want them deciding what we're doing on US 19 in Hillsborough because it doesn't go to Hillsborough. Right. You know, our three bridges, 60, the Gandy, Howard Franklin, I can understand those connectors.
I think it would be helpful for the board to hear from some of our other MPOs around the state of Florida and in the country. Yesterday in Tallahassee, I was joined by the executive director of the Orlando MPO that has 3 counties. And, you know, he described a very collegial process of how they work together to ensure that there are priorities that are locally driven in each county, and that the board is not dictating solutions in Osceola County or Seminole or Orange County if they're from the other areas. So I think that could be helpful, maybe some kind of peer exchange with the MetroPlan Orlando board members. And I only say that because I say it's right up I-4, that can be 4 hours, but it's relatively close. I think the elected officials there would really be receptive to having a conversation about that. And nothing is ever free of conflict, but I think they've, for 27 years now, managed to make it work. Actually longer, because they separated from the Regional Planning Council, but they were always a 3-county MPO. But yeah, we can certainly explore those options.
All right. Thank you. Vice Chair Eggers, did you want
yeah,
to
just
chime in on this particular?
Yeah,
Okay.
just wanted to just follow up a little bit. I think, and to your point, I think if you want to reach out to a couple of the commissioners in Pasco County, they represent the county with what would end up being the fewest board members, to see how they're processing their thoughts is, and because they've been generally very supportive. If at some point down the road we become the smallest, no one of the organizations would ever be able to hold a majority, and that would be important to me. So that at least you have 2 other counties that can obviously offset. Presumably Hillsborough would be the largest county. A few years ago, they asked this region, the state representative or state house in the Senate up there, they asked us to come up with one project that represented the #1 project in the region. And we all came together here first, and then it went to different cities and different counties, and eventually everybody got on board with one project, and it got funded. And so and the idea really is that this area, as economists from many universities, but specifically USF say, can be one of the most powerful regions in the country if we just come together. And so yeah, there's a lot of questions still to be answered. It's not a fait accompli by any sense, but I do think there's a lot here as far as catching more dollars that are out there. They're coming one way or another. We might as well get our at least fair share, if not more than. And certainly other areas of the state have been getting more than. And so we'd like to make sure that we do our part. Lots of questions still, but anyway, just wanted to share those thoughts.
Right, and I would agree, being another member of the TMA that's been working on this, it has been, it's a long process, and we still have quite a ways to go. And figuring this out in a way that everyone feels comfortable is really the highest priority. I think of it as just on a different scale, just similar to Forward Pinellas. So we come together here from all different parts of our county, and if we are taking up an item for Tarpon Springs, then we would get some input from that city. Not everything here is focused solely on St. Petersburg and Clearwater, the larger cities. We try to make sure everyone has a voice, and that's how I see this regional MPO coming together in the same way. So I feel pretty good about it. If I felt like Pinellas was going to be shortchanged in some way, I would not be as supportive of it. So just my 2 cents. Councilmember or Commissioner Albritton, I'm sorry, I didn't know who was next, so, yeah.
Okay, well, you brought up some concerns I think that most all of us have thought about, because Hillsboro's got a loud voice, and, you know, I think being collegiate with everyone, I've been to Washington and I've seen, I'll say this again, I said it before, they don't know who we are here. They don't know where Pinellas is. They know where Tampa Bay is, and if we had a Tampa Bay MPO, I agree with Dave. I mean, I think that we would have a very loud voice in getting more funding than we're getting now for better projects, you know. So we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, it is going to be a process, and I think we're all going to hope and make sure that everybody has an equal voice in this, so.
Thank you. And I'll note that if this was formed today, I believe we would be the largest MPO in the state then, right? So, kind of nice being the big dog, right? Councilmember Floyd.
Thank you. I just figured I'd add something real quick. I agree with Commissioner Shearer in that if I feel like we're not going to have a voice or we're in danger, then I would be worried about it. I believe that that's an issue that can be worked through, as Whit and other people have mentioned. But I really wanted to highlight that if anyone from Tampa feels that way as well, they're going to kill it faster than we ever can. They have a really contentious relationship, I think, with the county and the MPO, and losing votes on a close basis. And so I just wanted to highlight that it won't even be us. Like, a lot of elected officials in this room are comfortable and willing to work towards this, but I think a lot of elected officials on the other side of the bridge are going to be the ones who are looking at it with an extreme skeptical eye. And so I think if we can get them to buy in, hopefully that means that a lot of hurdles have been crossed, a lot of hurdles have been cleared, and plans have been put in place to protect everybody involved. So I'm sure that's what's going on right now, and I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that there's much more skeptical people than the people in this room involved in this process, and so we'll definitely have some structures in place.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll go ahead and move on. Did you have anything else for regional activities? Okay, great. We'll go on to our item C in our presentations. This one's an action item, the Regional Waterborne Transportation Market Demand Study. And that will be
Nasheen is going to
presented.
kick things off.
Okay.
But as Nasheen comes up, she can do this as well as I can, but I did want to let this board know that this initiative got started under the prior board, and we formed a waterborne committee that met for over a year to work through a lot of issues related to waterborne transportation. And it was a very diverse committee. It had operators on it. It had representatives from a variety of cities. It had the Florida Department of Transportation. And we accomplished a lot. We amended the long-range transportation plan to add a waterborne component to the long-range transportation plan. We worked out a variety of issues, and I think the success of PSTA receiving a federal grant and initiating service with an operator for the Clearwater Ferry is an outcome directly of the work that waterborne committee had. So Nasheen, hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder.
No, not at all. Thank you, Whit. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself to the new members of the board who might not know me. My name is Nosheen Rahman. I'm a principal planner here at the agency and manage special projects which integrate land use and transportation. And oftentimes those special projects are projects that come about because of the partnerships we have in the county, and partners such as the St. Pete Chamber of Commerce, who was our particular partner on this project, might ask us to help out with certain initiatives. So if you were on the board last year when this project was approved, just a refresher, is that we were working with the St. Pete Chamber of Commerce, specifically their Transportation and Housing and Land Use Committee, as they are kind of exploring what options there are to enhance regional waterborne transportation service. As Whit mentioned, this is something that we've outlined in our LRTP as a potential option in expanding transportation choices, and is a way for us to potentially reduce congestion on our roadways as we expand a waterborne transportation service or look at the opportunities to do so. So the St. Pete Chamber of Commerce convened a ULI, or Urban Land Institute, technical panel to discuss this topic, but found that they wanted to have some more regional and specific data to kind of back up the work that's being done there. So we kind of came into the picture to help out, as well as the consultant on the project, Diedrich RPM. Liz Diedrich is here today to present, and I'll hand it over to her shortly. But this study in itself is a market demand study, which looks at potential opportunities, barriers, and other factors in going after enhancing waterborne transportation services. It asks questions like, who wants to use this service? Where do they want to go with the service? What opportunities and barriers there are in encouraging or preventing people from using this service? And I would say a distinction from the previous work that we've done is that it's not necessarily predicting or projecting ridership, but rather serves as a litmus test of the market and really holistically asks, where are we providing the service that is needing it, or where are we not providing it that could need it? And so these project was involved in in-depth interviews, one-on-one with regional partners, not just on this side of the bay, but on the other side of the bay as well. The second phase of the project included a survey that was available area-wide, both to permanent residents and seasonal visitors, and it was also supplemented with some quantitative data on our county's demographics, on the commuter patterns, the employment densities in certain areas of our county and our region, and it all came together in this report. So with that, I will hand it over to Liz Diedrich to present, and we're happy to take any questions afterwards.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be here, and thank you for all your hard work and what you're doing for the community. It's really awesome to see. Closer? Sorry about that. Okay. It's kind of nostalgic for me to be here because I used to live down here. I was the director of sales and marketing for a cruise line out of the Panhandle of Florida, and they operated seasonally. And I said to the owner, we can move the ship, we can go somewhere else. The people from Minnesota, where I'm from, go further south too. So I proposed doing a demand study, which we did for Port Manatee, and we grew from 1.4 million to 17.5 million in revenue for ticket sales. So it wasn't a bad idea to expand, right? So today I'm really excited to present what we have and look forward to taking you through this. This gives you an overview of what we'll be covering today. Again, this is just the executive summary. The full report you've probably seen. It's over 100 pages. A lot of really good feedback and passionate responses from the areas around here. So we'll go through the study is designed to do, the commute, and what people want, what they would prefer, and as Nosheen said earlier, where they would like to have the different locations be available to them. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. As Nasheen said, we started the phase one, getting feedback from individuals and influencers and leaders to understand what they would like to see and make sure that we included in the survey design. So what we'll be taking you through is what the findings were for the consumer study. So jumping into the executive summary. So as you can see by these two graphs, the first on the top just shows how people are currently, where they're living and also how they're getting to work. And as you can see, 86% of the consumers are driving to work. There are some users of non-motorized ride share and bus in addition to other modes of transportation, but largely people are driving to their jobs. And this is a breakdown of where each different geo that we studied how they're getting their transportation to and from work. As you can see, it's largely through their vehicles, through their cars. Interestingly, in Manatee County, there's a large percentage of people who are already using the ferry service there. So you can see that represented here. And we had a concept statement of providing access to waterborne transportation services. And what I find very interesting, because we do these studies across the United States, particularly in markets where consumers are a little more stranded, if you will, in terms of having access to the waterborne transportation. We typically see upwards of 60% likelihood to use. And what was interesting from my perspective is each geo was exceeding 78% and wanting to have waterborne transportation or access to it. That is really interesting from our perspective. And also as a reminder, when we look at our data, there's a margin of error plus or minus 6%, which means if we do the study again, the information wouldn't change by more than 6 percentage points. So that's what MOE is, and we have statisticians. Misty's listening on the call. She's leading our stats. We do testing on all the data and make sure that we're at the proper confidence level. So everything's tested at 95%. So again, really high demand, a lot of interest in this access to waterborne transportation. And then we broke it out by each geo. And again, as I said earlier, it's consistent at 78% where people would like to have access to waterborne transportation. And the top two box scores are likely and very likely to use the service. So you can see that it's really strong. Then the thing to remember is what's important beyond having access. So it's the schedule, the ease of use and the convenience, as it says here, the geographic locations, and affordability and ticket price. Typically, people are looking for an annual fee if they're workers and they're trying to get back and forth to their job. They want to have a package price, if you will. So that's something to bear in mind. But again, these are the top attributes that would cause people to consider using the service. Then we asked about routes. So the top routes are listed here, the top three. So St. Pete to and from Tampa, St. Pete to and from the Tampa International Airport, and St. Pete from Anna Maria Island / Bradenton. So those are the top three locations that people indicated their interest in terms of the ferry routes. Then we ask a pricing question, and it's a consistent price. So we ask people what would be too much and what would be kind of an ambivalence point in terms of the price. So you can see each location has the average price that could be used in promoting a round trip ticket, if you will. Then the next question is, how would they expect to, the first mile, last mile, get to the ferry docking location? Most were okay with walking a few blocks, 2 to 4 blocks, but they wouldn't want to walk much more than that, so that's just something to remember. And they would use the car to get to wherever the ferry docking location would be. The ride-sharing services are also the second most popular choice that people would use. And this is the density map that Nosheen was talking about a little bit ago. This presents where the density of jobs are and the access to transportation that could be important in terms of multimodal transportation system. So either having waterborne or other multimodal transportation would create access for consumers that are working in these geos. So you can see the purple is the highest density for those zip codes and jobs. Make sense? Then, we do this as a matter of kind of demand projections. We look at your total workforce, and because you had a really strong percentage of recommended utilization, we took 10% and then 2 trips per week. So assuming that a person going to their office would only go twice, that the total. Make sense? So opportunities and ideas here. Again, there's an opportunity to expand your waterborne transportation system. You have to obviously take into consideration the things that were the key drivers. So what would cause people to use the waterborne transportation, the schedule, ease of use, the pricing, the locations, and to make sure the integration of those docking locations are in place, and then leveraging what the research full report in your go-to-market plan will be important. So that's it. I'm going to jump ahead to Misty. We've got a couple of extra slides, and then we'll go to any questions that folks have. Make sense? All right, so we'll go to the next slide. This addresses the ridership conditions with Cross Bay Ferry. Misty, how do we get Misty on here? All right.
Yes. Yep. We looked at a certain time period, trying to see if there was an.
There you are.
Okay. We looked at a certain time period for the Cross Bay Ferry ridership, just to kind of see what some of those trends were. And not surprisingly, there is an increase in ridership for Lightning games, and that was part of the things that we were looking at and discussing. But the majority of ridership was just on weekends, regardless of if there was a Lightning game or not. So it was one of the things that we were looking at to see if there was any indication of any influence there. And then we also looked at the origination data. Are we leaving from St. Pete? Are we leaving from Tampa? Is there one more than the other? And they're pretty even. So 53% was out of Tampa and 47% was out of St. Pete. I don't know if you wanted to roll forward to the next slides, Liz.
I
Okay.
am there, yep.
Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't have the visual for there. But we looked at St. Pete and South Tampa. We also looked at Clearwater and Dunedin. We looked at where their home zip code is and where they're going to work. So we can see some of the trends in transportation from employment. So where are we living? Where are we going to? And what opportunities can we provide for them as well, just to be able to get to their jobs more easily with the multimodal transportation.
All right. Open it up to questions.
Thank you so much. Before we go to the question, I just wanted to check to see if we had any requests for public comment. I know we've got our friends from the St. Pete Chamber here, Christy Bruner.
Yes, Christy Bruner has
PSTA
asked to speak on this item, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and board members. My name is Christy Bruner, Vice President of Advocacy at the St. Pete Chamber. We're just here to support the presentation of the Regional Waterborne Transportation Market Demand Study. Nosheen did come to our Transportation Committee meeting this past week and presented to our members as well. And we thank Board Pinellas for engaging in this important data collection process as we continue to advocate for the increased accessibility to regional transit options to accommodate our growing workforce, including utilizing our waterways. We look forward to your partnership moving forward, and we would like to invite you to join us on our regional advocacy trip to Tallahassee coming up on March 11th and 12th. We're again partnering with Amplify Clearwater, Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber to present a united front to our legislators. And regional connectivity is at the top of our priorities in the state legislature this year. And importantly, regional connectivity is not limited to roadways and traveling in cars, and we need to include new concepts to be successful in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina, did we have any other requests to speak?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
All right, thank you. Questions from the board? Commissioner Eisner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I could see how this has benefits for somebody that's doing a 9-to-5 job. What happens in the situation where somebody has to stay beyond their normal times? Would you be able to accommodate? I understand you can have a car and drive it to the ferry, but then you have a situation, once you get where you're going, how do you get where you're going?
Great question. There, part of what we saw in the key drivers is, how they would get to the various connections. So you've got a point there. So those other multimodal connections will be important.
Because I could see how this is very helpful for a lightning game or for, I know they have this in Manhattan where, the ferry brings you into a location and from there you could be distributed with other transportation. So unless we have good transportation once we get to the other side, I don't know, is that being looked into as well?
So what they said is they'd walk up to 2 blocks, to the different ports. So that would be something that would be a consideration as a next step.
And then what would happen if the party has to work late, for argument's sake?
So that was the other thing, ease of use and timing. So that would all have to be under consideration. One thing that we also studied were people who are tourists. We didn't include that data. We focus, that's in the report. And there was a high use, I think it was 88% of people who are, transient residents and visitors that would be likely to use it. So the actual schedule would have to be, I would say, piloted.
See, one of the things that I was thinking about is people they go to work, they meet somebody for dinner, drinks, whatever, and then how do you get back 1 o'clock in the morning? Or was some of the things I was thinking as this was going down. But it's a good idea, and I think it would have an application, and if you have that preliminary that you're going to be out, that may not be the way you want to travel into work. But
Typically what we see is clients that we've done studies for this, in Washington State, et cetera, they conduct a pilot initially, and then they look at how that pilot, works out and what they need to do to continue to grow it.
thank you.
Speaking of pilots, I'll just point out that the Cross Bay Ferry was started as a pilot project. It still is kind of a pilot. It hasn't yet gotten to the point where it has the level of frequency and span of service that really viable public transportation would have. So that's why you see it mostly being used for excursion and entertainment trips. But I just want to remind the board that journey to work trips are about 16% of all trips on the road. And that's been in a precipitous decline over the decades. It was probably closer to 30% when I started my career, and now it's 16 or 17%. So if we're just focused on the 16 to 17%, we're missing a lot of transportation. And so you want people to use it regularly like they're going to work because that builds in frequency, but if they're using it for dinner and entertainment, that still trips off the highway and fewer parking spaces potentially that people are seeking. So it all needs to work together. What I want to be clear about is there is no service plan associated with the market research study. So this just tells us what the opportunities are, and we would have to factor in some of those influences that people cite for not using it or choosing to use it as part of a service plan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And yes, it's funny, just earlier today in the one of our PSTA committee meetings, we were talking about the Cross Bay Ferry and what the future might hold for that as we've moved into year-round service and hopefully looking at a different way of operating it that could take a lot of this into consideration. So a study like this is going to be so helpful for our considerations for the future of the Cross Bay Ferry. And then we have Clearwater has been, has their ferry service now, and it's interesting to me to see how on slide 7 with the daily commute and transportation, just how many folks said that they use the ferry or a waterway to get to work who are not so much in St. Pete, but in Clearwater, Dunedin, Manatee County. So you can see that there is that hint of opportunity where if we offered more, how many more people are going to be served by that, and how do we see those numbers go up, leaving some more room on the roads for those who have other choices or who have other schedules. So yeah, fascinating stuff. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for that thoughtful presentation. A couple quick questions. On the price points there, I'm assuming those are round trip, or were they one way? They were round trip, okay. About how many respondents were there to the survey? And did that include tourists, or were they all?
The full report does include tourists, and the margin of error is at smack dab in the middle. That moderate is 4 to 8. We were at 6%. 6%. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
May. Yesterday, we presented the findings to the St. Pete Chamber Transportation and Housing Committee and had a really good discussion. We may want to look a little closer with the consultants' help at the South Tampa and Manatee market. There were a lot of write-in support for that, and the St. Pete Chamber seems very interested in potentially tapping into the workforce there if there was a direct travel market via the water, because their transportation situation in South Hillsborough County is pretty rough. That's where the growth in the county has been. The infrastructure hasn't really kept up, and commute times are exceedingly long and getting longer. And if you had a quick trip across the bay, the chamber feels like you might be able to grow the workforce pie a little bit. So we're just having some preliminary discussions, but in response to yesterday's conversation, we may take a little bit closer look at the data in the South Hillsborough County market.
So is that something you would bring back to us if you decided to move?
Right. It would be maybe a small supplement to the consultant work authorization, but when we get the findings back, we would bring them back and share with them.
Okay, great. And for now, if there are no further requests for discussion, the action requested today is for us to accept the findings of the study. And for that, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll go to Vice Chair Eggers.
I just want to make sure that, again, this is great work, and I think there's a lot more to absorb and understand and talk about. So is this accepting as in receiving?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Doesn't commit us to any policy actions.
Yeah, so we'll make sure versus, receiving versus believing completely. So I just want to, we're receiving. I got it. Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, who made the second, please? Thank you.
It was Mayor Freeney. All right, seeing that there is a motion and a second and no request for further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Liz. This was very, very interesting information. We appreciate all you've done.
Thank you all, and you guys are great to work with, so thank you. Now I get to go back to Minnesota.
All right. Wow. Next, we have item 7D, which is the US 19 Regional Transit Service Plan. This is another action item. And
Chelsea's
I
going
believe Chelsea is going to be presenting this one by Zoom. So we'll wait to see her wonderful face on the screen to take us through this presentation.
All right, thank you all for allowing me to present virtually. I appreciate the flexibility, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you in the room today. So today I'm going to talk to you about the US 19 Regional Transit Service Plan. So this service plan is really going to build on work that has already been done. In 2022, the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority, or TBARTA, conducted a study to look at the ability for transit to function in the US 19 corridor. They looked at a variety of station areas, actually starting with almost 30 different possible station areas. They looked at a variety of alignments, mostly up and down north-south along US 19, but some different alignments through the gateway area were considered as a part of that. And they also developed a preliminary concept of operations, how that service could look. As a part of the recommendation that was express bus service was ultimately recommended. There were other considerations that looked at express bus in a dedicated lane or in mixed traffic. And the ultimate recommendation was to start with kind of a more basic express service. Coupled with that were 15 basic low investment transit stops. And then as a part of it, some basic cost estimates were developed as a part of that for implementation at varying levels. But that's kind of where the TBARTA study stopped. And it's not possible to take the recommendations of the TBARTA study and move forward with any kind of implementation because those recommendations were very high level. So that's what we're looking to do as a part of this effort, is to take that service plan for the regional transit service to the next level. We'd like to investigate transit-oriented development opportunities within the proposed station areas that were identified by TBARTA. We'd like to conduct market-based evaluation of the redevelopment potential of each of those areas, create some renderings to really be able to visualize how station areas and the redevelopment could look together in those areas, and also to consider how the service would operate as it exists today in the US 19 corridor, but also as it would exist when the US 19 treatments are completed heading to the north. So one of the first activities we'll undertake is a comprehensive market study. We're going to be evaluating the demographics of the transit demand in the corridor. And this is really important because the demographics will really lead what that transit service looks like. If the demographics really speak to the commuter type population, then how that service operates is going to look a lot different than if the demographics are focused more on accessing PIE or doctor's appointments or social recreational trips. We're also going to review the redevelopment potential for each station area. And that's going to look at everything from the strength of the market, the existing roadway connectivity, the physical suitability for redevelopment in those areas. And then it'll identify the sites that would be most supportive for express bus stations. And this part's really important because we want to make sure that whatever we're investing in terms of public infrastructure is really supportive of and complementary to what the private sector is going to be doing around those station areas. We're going to start with the 15 station areas that came out of the TBARTA study, and we're going to look at different typologies for each one. So a basic station area might just have a shelter and a bus bench, whereas a more intense station area could have bicycle parking, micromobility stations, bus pull-out bays. So we're going to look at all 15 station areas and really try to determine what would work best at each location. From there, we're going to look at the highest potential for redevelopment in each of those areas, and we're going to select 10 stations to do a bit more work with. And that'll include developing 2D graphics for land use and transportation for each of those 10 selected stations. And then we're also going to identify improvements for each one of those areas. So we really want to hone in on where an express bus station should be located at each one of those 10 areas. And we want to look at how are people going to walk to this site? How are they going to bike to it? How is the bus going to operate? within the station, and how will cars go around the station as well. So it'll be a very comprehensive. And then we'll go ahead and develop some 3D renderings for each one so we can really see how the planned redevelopment is going to integrate with the planned express bus stations. And then building on that, we're looking to develop a preliminary operating plan. So we want to refine the service route. We'll look at the span of service and frequency. We want to look also at how this service is going to integrate with the existing local services that PSTA is already operating along the corridor, as well as Go Pasco, the transit provider up in Pasco County. We'll develop some capital and operating costs that are going to be based on how many buses are needed, how many bus drivers are needed, just to really support that span of service. And then we'll come up with a phased implementation plan for each of those project elements, including looking at opportunities for public-private partnerships. Ford Pinellas isn't going to be going this alone. We're going to be working closely with the Florida Department of Transportation, PSTA, and Go Pasco. Pasco County MPO is also going to be involved in this effort, as well as Pinellas County. And we had a lot of conversations about how best to engage the public with this project. And we determined that online surveys probably aren't going to be the best way to pull the public into what we're working with. So we'd like to focus on holding focus groups with local residents, workers that are employed along the corridor, and also business leaders. So we could really talk to them about what their needs for transit service are and see how best this operating plan can support those needs. And we're also going to consider an online survey to gauge preferences of potential riders, but online will be kind of supplementary to the focus groups that we'll be holding. In terms of next steps, there is a scope and a fee sheet within your packet. So today we're asking the board to approve the work authorization to conduct this study. This will be funded using MPO funds or our transportation funds. We are still working with Pasco MPO. They may be kicking in some funds to help us cover the cost, but those are still to be determined. And once we kick this project off, we intend to have it completed within 12 months. And we'll be bringing the information to you on this all throughout the process so that you're informed and can answer questions and ask questions along the way. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Whit, did you want to add anything before we go to discussion?
Just briefly to set a little context for this, I think you all are aware that we've been having some business focus groups in the Palm Harbor, Tarpon Springs area over the last month or so. We are going to be working with the Florida Department of Transportation to undertake a US 19 corridor plan to look at whether we should continue building interchanges or build a bridge, a viaduct, if you will, or some other modified approach to US 19 from the essentially Tampa Road, Nebraska Road north to the Pasco County line. That'll probably happen in a couple of years. So this will lay a foundation for how any recommendations here could get incorporated into the Department of Transportation's work on US 19. And I think that's pretty important. The other piece of this is the county Housing and Community Development Department has long expressed an interest in looking at redevelopment potential in the unincorporated county on North US 19. They have not yet gotten to a point where they have a scope of services to do that. So we hope we can help facilitate that effort and lay some groundwork for that effort, which might subsequently come. Maybe we can answer the questions for them on that. So there's a lot of interest in the corridor. I have said many times that probably the best transportation strategy that we could have is for Pasco County to get more high-paying jobs and keep some of their workforce there, and also some of our North County employment can go into Pasco. That would reduce some of the pressure on our roadways. But US 19 is going to be congested even if we build interchanges. It just probably will as this area continues to grow. So developing some options in the corridor fits with our long-range plans, fits with the growth plans. And Pasco County has historically been very excited about this kind of service. I also want to be clear that what we're asking you to pay for today is the study. And this would not cover anything related to the service. Once we have recommendations on that service plan, we would come back to the local government partners to see if there's support. That could be county, could be cities, and then see if there's a willingness to approach the Department of Transportation with potential matching funds. So all that would happen after the year and completing these recommendations.
Thank you. Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Chelsea, and for utilizing a lot of the information from TBARTA when we were going through that process, because we put a lot of work, time, and effort into that, and certainly received the support from Commissioner Starkey, Commissioner Mariano, and others in Pasco County. You made a friend in Pasco County when you said bring Pasco more high-paying jobs, because that is certainly what they are looking to do. So I think it's really good to use at least the base structure on that, and looking at some of the hub stops along the way that we tried to identify that were places where persons certainly could get on and continue to move up or down the corridor and find employment either way, and take some of that traffic off of the roadways from regular cars. We also looked at, I don't know if you've seen that in the information you pulled, but we also looked at going on the backside of Pasco, coming back into Hillsborough County around the airport, and how that would encapsulate all three counties for employment opportunities. So I think that's really good. I'm excited that even though TBARTA went away, the information that we were gathering and some of the plans that we put forth can be utilized for future growth and development. I'd like to make a motion to approve for the funding request that's been submitted for the study and planning.
All right, thank you. We have a motion. We'll go to Commissioner Scott and then Vice Chair Eggers.
I'll second that. And I just a comment that I think this is long overdue. If there's any corridor in Pinellas County that's right for express bus service, it's US 19. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Vice Chair Eggers.
Yeah, I'm not as excited as my colleagues. I'm interested in the study, and the only question I was going to ask, is there a way to phase this study so that we can, have a drop-off point at different places if we're finding results that what we have found is when we start a project, and by the time it's implemented, it's sometimes 10 years later, and things change dramatically. I mean, the roads that we're talking about putting in place right now, the Curlew, for instance, isn't going to be finished until, I'm going to say a date, and FDOT's 2029 is what I'm being told. No, yes, yeah. Anyway, so, and then the next one is, there seems to be consensus on Tampa Road. So you're probably talking, well, I don't know, another 5 years after that, maybe, so you're talking, you're starting to get way out there, and things that we talk about today are based on, I want to make sure what they're based on, based on the possibility of future infrastructure that you talked about, which is going to be dramatically different. Also identifying the development sites. I'm not sure what that means, and how we're going to interact with private property owners to see what opportunities are there. Clearly, there's opportunities, there's possibilities, but how realistic are they? I'm a little bit concerned. $300,000 is not, the end of the world, but it's a lot of money, I think. So I'm just curious if there's some potential drop-off spots, along that $300,000 highway, pun intended. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's, some real easy drop-off points, because the study is kind of broken into two components. One is the redevelopment potential and narrowing down those stations, because I think TBARTA identified probably too many stations for it to be express bus. So what we want to do is say, okay, what are the 7 or 8 best ones so that it really works as express bus? And that might be Sunset Point and US 19, it might be 590 and US 19. I don't know what those are going to be yet until we get into that. And then the other component is the transit service plan. I suppose we could do one and then do the other and bring that information back. So I'll talk to Chelsea about what we can do. But I would prefer that we went ahead and authorized the full amount and have us commit to not going beyond, say, 50% without giving you an update of where we are and how it's looking, if that seems reasonable.
That's reasonable. And I'm assuming all this will take into account the first mile, last mile, each development site with parking and all the realism that goes with it. But I would be more acceptable if we could take a pause at the 50% expenditure place and see what we've got and see if we're interested in continuing.
I don't have a problem coming back and providing an update to the board at that point.
And
We'll just
then-
have to figure out what logically where that.
Okay, and then at that point, be able to assess to continue or not continue. I just want to make sure that that option's available to us. So
We can always,
that's my thought, anyway.
we can always structure a contract with a consultant that way.
All right. If that would be a friendly amendment offer to the motion. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
And if I could.
Yes, I will, yes.
Okay.
Good, thank you. And if I could clarify also, we're not looking at this service as being contingent on a certain configuration of US 19. It could operate today with the way the road looks. And frankly, if the road's under construction, maintenance of traffic is a huge issue, and giving people another option rather than driving could be a source of funding, potentially.
Well, I've been in that traffic, whether it's a bus or a car, it's an awful mess. And it's going to be that way. I mean, Tom Washburn at Pinellas County Transit, he gets calls from me all the time like, are you kidding me? This is the best we can do at Curlew. It's backed up all the way down to Countryside Mall at rush hour traffic. And I'm like, this can't be the best. There's got to be better. And then we had an accident in the middle of all of that the other day. It was a total disaster. So I don't know that buses will help that either for the next probably 8 years as we go through the construction. So anyway, not trying to be too negative about it, but thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just quick question, Chair, Madam Chair. Pasco County, did we ask them to participate in the study and they declined, or did we?
Chelsea, maybe you can answer that. We certainly hope that they would come up with 50% of the funds.
Yeah, we did request, and they actually offered up front to assist in the funding. And then they had some staff changes and some budgeting changes on their end that now they're no longer certain that they can participate, but they are still trying to financially participate.
But I will say that if we proposed any service, we would absolutely expect Pasco County to come to the table and pay for the service. And hopefully they'll do us a solid on some other study in the future.
Yes, that's that cooperation you were talking about earlier.
Commissioner Eisner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when we do these studies, how do we get the message out there to get the feedback to do the study? And I only bring this up because I was at that corridor meeting in Tarpon Springs, and it was by far a low volume attendance. I didn't know, we had one business person there, we had one commissioner, me, and we had the city manager. We had probably more Forward Pinellas representatives than almost people there. So my question, and I'm not using that as an example, but how do we get the message out that we need input for these studies? Otherwise, how are we spending the money to get that input is my question.
I think what Chelsea suggested is having focus groups, and we had really good success with the one we did for the long-range plan, where I think we had close to 30 people that participated in a series of 3 meetings, and it was a good enough crowd, might have been more than that, that we were able to break people up into North, Mid, and South County. But it's really involving the chambers, it's involving the local governments and asking them to help us spread the word and encourage people to be there. You know, when you look far out in the future, it's hard to get people engaged. If you're talking about a housing development that's going up in their backyard, they turn out. So we try to turn up the heat a little bit as much as we can, but you know, we are talking about changes over time. So we also provide incentives for people to participate in some of our surveys, and we found that that helps drive support. We push things out on social media, but we rely on our local governments really because they have probably the best means of communicating with their citizens.
So I just wanted to add this one thing. I spoke with my city manager and I said that we should just park a couple of construction vehicles on each side and we would have a full audience of concerned residents in 5 or 10 minutes, so.
Just tell them a roundabout's coming or something.
Thank you.
Please don't. Thank you. Anyone else? I like this, just having, with us going through the Sunrun and Rising study and what that led to with our transit-oriented development plans. It gave us an opportunity to look at how we might, in St. Petersburg, how we might want to modernize our zoning to meet today's needs with today's transportation options. And it was really enlightening, and I'm hoping that that happens here too. It could be that some modest changes in zoning that no one had even noticed were archaic could now be changed to create more housing and more housing near these stations. So it actually could be quite an advantage for this part of our county and for Pasco as well. So, all right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Seeing that there are no further requests for discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Madam Chair, for the record, there were no citizens wishing to be heard on this item.
I forgot to ask you. Thank you so much. You can always just interrupt me when I start to do my little drum roll part.
I try not to get yelled at.
Yeah. So next we will go on to so that's it for our action items for today, right? Yes. And so next we have our director's report, starting with the all-new safety minute. It's exciting.
We're trying something a little bit different this year. We've got a couple of new items on the agenda that you'll see continuing. One is we talk a lot about safety when they come up in projects, but our staff felt like we maybe could have an anchor at every board meeting where we talked about a particular topic that we're trying to figure out on the safety front. And this one emanated from our Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which is a combination of people who just like riding bikes and also staff from the local governments who are either engineers or planners who have a responsibility for helping plan the multimodal transportation network. And there have been some high-profile crashes involving bicyclists versus pedestrian or scooter. And the committee was very concerned about, is this an increasing trend? Is this something that we need to start paying more attention to? Is there some direct education efforts and things like that we can provide? And our response was, well, we don't really have the data because most of the vehicle crash reports that law enforcement completes are for cars and trucks impacting either another car or truck or a pedestrian or a bicyclist. But if it's two non-motorized users, they're not required to fill that out in the crash reports. They are getting better, and they are beginning to do that as those types of devices and modes become more prevalent. I mean, 10 years ago, we weren't even talking much about e-bikes, and now everybody seems to own one. So what you have in your packet is just a summary of what we've been able to find through a manual review of crash reports. And it looks like that the percentage of those crashes involving pedestrian versus scooter or e-bike or bicycle or bike to bike or bike to scooter are only about 16% of total fatal and serious crashes involving pedestrians and bicyclists. So it's a relatively small number, but it is apparently increasing. So it is something we're going to continue to monitor. You have in your packet an array of information. You have the reports themselves that we're able to glean, and then you have a 3-year history of the breakdown of those types of crashes. And this is just presented for information. That's what these safety minute is supposed to be. But if you all see something in the data that you're interested in, or if you would like us to investigate further, we can certainly do that.
Thank you. Any questions on this particular information? Yes, Mayor Frainie.
Just one, this was countywide, right?
Countywide.
So I was surprised Dunedin's not on there. I guess that's a good thing, but thank you.
Well, and we have noticed that there is a particularly problematic intersection at 22nd Avenue North and the Pinellas Trail, and we're going to be looking at some potential solutions at that location. That's been one where we've had quite a few crashes and a fatality not long ago. Okay, the next item that we're introducing to you is our data minute. And what we have decided to do at a staff level, again, is to do a little bit of a deep dive into a topical issue that we're hearing about in the community or we're hearing from our committees. And one persistent point of discussion since it began operating is the Sunrunner and the impact it's had on traffic and safety in our community. And this has, that discussion has led to some changes in legislation that we saw in last legislative session. So our staff pulled data from a variety of sources, real-time traffic information, looking at the retiming of the traffic signals that St. Pete undertook, and looking at traffic count data. And the summary of it, and again, I'm committed to spending less than 60 seconds on all this, is that travel time has improved in the Sunrunner corridor compared to before the Sunrunner existed. So if you think of the growth that we've had, that service, now we only have 2 through travel lanes and 1 shared lane. Years ago, it was 4 lanes in each direction on the First Avenues, and over time, it's now 2 through lanes. There's on-street parking that was added a few years back. The travel time is a little bit faster than it was. Obviously, the signals need to be retimed, but having the Sunrunner as part of that retiming helped. And then for traffic diversion, so the feedback I've gotten when I say, well, it seems like traffic is moving pretty well in the First Avenues corridor, people will say, well, that's because traffic has shifted to the Fifth Avenue North corridor. And we did see an increase. There has been an increase in about 1,000 or so vehicles per day in the Fifth Avenue corridor, but not enough to really lead to significant levels of congestion. And it could be that's just because there's been growth, and now the Fifth Avenue corridor is a more convenient route to getting to either where new people live or new jobs have been added. The Department of Transportation did a study of the Pasadena Avenue portion of this and came to a similar conclusion, so this confirms work that was done in 2022 and 23 to look at that. In addition, the crash data has improved in the corridor. Generally, it appears that that corridor traffic is operating a little closer to the speed limit than before, so we have fewer serious injury crashes and fatal crashes. So there has been a travel time saving of about 3 minutes in the corridor, and this is just for your information so that you have some facts if you get questions about this, and we are happy to entertain questions or look at this further at a future meeting if that's what you'd like us to do.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that one? Councilmember Floyd.
I didn't want to ask a question. I just wanted to say thank you for the information. It's very relevant. A part of this goes through my district. I live just a few blocks away from it, and sort of lines up with what I've seen as well, experiencing using the corridor. And I'm glad you mentioned the Fifth Avenue North, could be consistent with just growth in the area. What's nice about Fifth Avenue North also is that we had it's Alt 19, and we had the Alt 19 project, so it's been repaved recently, and a bunch of crosswalks, overhead crosswalks have been added, so any negative impacts are knocked down by the fact that we have a safer way to cross the road as well being added in addition to this. So great, and I enjoy the data and the safety minutes, so look forward to it in future meetings, so thanks.
Thank you. I was thinking of you while we were going through this, because you have First, Fifth, you have Ninth as well, right? Any input on Ninth Ave North?
Ninth is the one that I use the most, and I have not seen any evidence of anything changing, because I live just 1 block away from Ninth, and it seems exactly the same. I haven't noticed any difference personally.
Yeah, since all three of those streets are in your district, and you have that westward movement, especially at the end of the day. I was interested to get your input on that, so thank you. Vice Chair Eggers.
Yeah, I'm going to just, since we're not doing any action on these, slip back to the one just before the safety. And there's just been kind of like settling in, I think, a little bit, the information. To me, it seems rather dramatic, the number of incapacitating accidents as well as fatalities with the e-bikes. And I don't know if, I know the bicyclists on the trail, and I know not all, but many don't stop at the crossings, and really you just almost have to assume they're not going to stop, because they certainly don't want to hurt anybody intentionally. But that's just, that mentality, I think, is somewhat with the e-bikes, and they are fast, and they are, I'm not sure what the mentality is, but I think we need to do a better job of getting the information out to people who are using those, how susceptible to serious injury and death they are if they're not careful. I mean, it's just, to me, it's extremely alarming. And now I've started seeing a lot of well, not now, but those ones that you just stand on. What are they called? Are they scooters? No, they're not. These are, no, I'm sorry. They're like a long, with 2 wheels on it. You stand on it and you just like. Yeah. Yeah. Most of the ones I'm talking about have the motor, and they do not stop. And talk about vulnerable. I don't know. I just think we need to have I don't want to call it a campaign and be dramatic about it, but something informational to our residents, to kids, to parents who have kids that are doing, riding these things, that it's extremely dangerous. And I always take the opportunity when we have these kind of conversations to, let our parks dude at Pinellas County understand that I think the travel pattern, the way they've changed it, it made a dramatic effect also on safety, and especially with increased motorized bicycles, e-bikes on the trail. They should be together, back and forth, and let the slow walkers and whatever else on the other side. So just so you're listening, Paul Causey, it's just another pitch to go back to the other way of doing it, but thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Mayor Freeney?
Yeah, I was just going to add on the trail, obviously, you've got a lot of issues up in Dunedin because of having that very busy section. And it's my understanding, Sheriff's Department might be getting a couple of e-bikes so they can keep up with some of the problems. And I think that's where we have to get creative, because I know they're doing a lot of extra patrol up there. A lot of that's education. But we also have some bad actors that probably are not going to listen to education. They need more. So, but I do think part of it is they've got to be on the type of vehicle that's going to compete to get to the people that are causing the problems. So I'm looking back.
I don't know if you've seen in the news reports, but there has been a little bit more enforcement activity on the trail, targeting people who are going way over the speed limit or using inappropriate devices. And that's something I think everybody's been asking for a while, so I'm glad to see. Maybe Commissioner Scott's behind that.
Yeah, the trail activity report, there's a group that meets quarterly, and we get that in our report here. There's actually quite a bit of good information in there, and right now I think it's chaired by Tarpon Springs police officer, so it's good to see that they're taking it a little bit more serious and there's more enforcement activity, because it's most definitely needed. I've experienced it personally many times as a pretty regular trail user, so yeah, it's definitely needed.
In your upcoming events item, we do have February 22nd is the enforcement day, and I know we've talked about maybe doing that more frequently, but it's coming up soon, and that's a peak period of one of the busier times of the year for the trail.
Do we have any update on some of the issues that we found? I don't know if it was in Dunedin, Palm Harbor area, with some of the young kids that were driving rather aggressively and creating some interactions with residents. Any updates on that front?
I don't have any updates, but we can look into that a little bit. I know that's part why some of the enforcement activity has been stepped up, is in response.
Mo, is that part of the enforcement, that looking at that
Yeah,
piece
it
of it?
totally is, and I'm looking back at our deputy back there because he does a lot of it in Dunedin. And, but yeah, that's definitely, they're called the wheelies, and they're just very aggressive and surrounding people and trying to intimidate people. And so we've just had a lot of extra trying to get on that.
Thank you.
No, it's not good, and we don't want that. We want to, stop it in its tracks. So it's bad. So, and I know that one of the techniques that the sheriff has used, because they'll say, if you run into these kids, some of them are borderline kids, is to take pictures, because then the sheriff's office is using those pictures to go to school resource officers to identify the kids and basically show up at their home. So. That's pretty effective.
What we're hearing is that a lot of people will take to social media, but they're not calling it in.
Right, they're not calling it in.
Complaining. So you've got the non-emergency number, but call the police,
Right. Right. And that's huge, and that's what we're putting out there constantly. Call, take picture.
Yep.
So.
Commissioner Eisner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I tend to agree with Commissioner Eggers. We have a breakdown in not just this. We have a breakdown of jet skis. We have a breakdown of kids on they're like the water motorcycles. I see them on bicycles. We get kids on MLK that get hit all the time. I'm watching them fly by on a regular bicycle. But I also wanted to share there is a positive to the e-bike as well. And I've also spoken with Blanton about it, because on Klosterman, when you're coming east-west and there's a no right on red on Alt 19, nobody sees that for some reason. They just make the right on red. And I know I have an e-bike and I was going with the light, and if I didn't have an e-bike to give the acceleration to get out of the way of this person that was making the turn, she would have hit me. And so there is a benefit to it as long as you're not exceeding the limits. And as it was said earlier by Commissioner Scott, Tarpon Springs has been really going after the people that are flying by, because on Tarpon Avenue, nobody stops. They're just buzzing by, which is why I kind of tried to recommend that we have a motion sensor there so that they don't, because they're not going to hit that light, that button. So you might as well have a motion sensor letting the cars know, because otherwise we're going to be going to a lot of funerals. It's bad. They go 30, 40, 50 miles an hour across that road, and it's startling if you're coming down Tarpon Avenue. So something should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. You've got a couple more things to tell us about, right?
Keep going. Yeah, just real briefly, thank you, Commissioner Scherer, for joining us on January 30th. We had our certification review. I thought it was a productive, good discussion all day long. The federal team was there. We had Brian Hunter from the Florida Department of Transportation. PSTA had a representative there. I think Councilmember Fig Sanders joined us online briefly, and you stopped by before I got there. The conversation was very positive. The federal team feels like we're doing a lot of good, noteworthy practices. We did not hear anything about corrective actions, which is good. You all will see a report probably in May or June, and then we'll have a presentation at probably the July meeting from the federal team. And we'll look forward to a positive report. But we go through this every 4 years. That's why it's called a quadrennial review. And it is just to make sure that we're following all the requirements in federal law and executive orders and actions. And the landscape is changing, so our next 4-year review may be different. But this one was a good one. And I want to really thank the team. Chelsea and her staff did a great job getting things prepared. We had to send them a lot of information, responses to questions, and I think they were very appreciative of our responsiveness. So thanks to the staff. And then just another note, we also go through an annual certification review with the Florida Department of Transportation, and just completed sending them a lot of information on that as well. And you all will get that report. Last item is my legislative update, and that is why I was running late a little bit today. I drove back from Tallahassee this morning, but I was invited to speak to the Senate Transportation Committee with my colleagues at other MPOs, and when I saw the agenda item, my heart sank a little bit because it was a discussion of MPOs and no other information, and and usually that's not a good sign in Tallahassee. Last year we had a very bad MPO bill that was drafted, and the bill sponsors, came up and said, well, we've talked to everybody. We've talked to hundreds of people, and they proceeded to say a whole bunch of misinformation about MPOs and how we operate and how we function, and it was frustrating. So this year seems to be off to a better start. Senator Collins, who represents Hillsborough County, reached out to us, invited us to come to the meeting. As soon as I saw that agenda item, I said, well, I guess we need to watch this. And then 5 minutes later, the staff director called me and invited me to come up and be part of a panel discussion. Johnny Wong from Hillsborough County, Tania Gorman from Pasco, and then Gary Huttman from the Orlando Metroplan MPO all served as a panelist for the committee. And we were joined by Kim Holland, who is the Assistant Secretary over policy and MPOs at the central office. And it was a very positive, productive discussion, I'm glad to say. They were interested in our progress towards potentially merging the MPOs. And so they asked what barriers and obstacles we're hearing, what challenges we see, how can the legislature help? And I said, just keep expanding the transportation budget and bringing more dollars. That is a big thing that you could do to help. Senator Collins offered his personal support. He likes the idea of doing town hall meetings to get people involved, and he said he would be glad to use his office, his connections, to help host town hall meetings if we felt that would be helpful. I reported what Commissioner Egger said about the January 17th joint BCC meeting, where there was discussion of involving the city councils and city commissions of our larger jurisdictions in that conversation as well, and he seemed very encouraged by that. He was happy to hear that. So I feel positive. There was no specific legislation. There probably will be some legislation in the transportation bill this year that mirrors some of the executive orders that we're seeing in Washington. I would not be surprised about that. So we're taking a proactive approach to that, and we'll be ready when that comes up. Are there any questions about the Senate Transportation Committee meeting? You can go watch it on the Florida channel, and again, I was just very pleased by the questions. And most of the senators who weighed in said that they had very positive experiences when they were in local government and serving on their MPOs. The guy from Ocala-Marion in particular, and then a senator from Jacksonville, and then a senator from Miami-Dade all spoke up and said good things about MPOs, which was nice to hear. I do have a couple of items just to make you aware. Leading up to session, there has been an affordable housing bill that's been filed, Senate Bill 184 and House Bill 247. The bills would require local governments to permit accessory dwelling units in single-family residential zones without increasing parking requirements. Planned unit developments in master plan communities would be exempt. It would allow local governments to offer density bonuses to landowners who donate land for affordable housing to military families, and would allow the Florida Housing Finance Corporation to create a new model financing program for affordable housing projects. So we'll be tracking that and see where that goes. House Bill 401 and Senate Bill 634 addresses single-family hybrid use, and they would allow local governments to prohibit single-family hybrid use or single-family homes used that are rented on a large scale. And this purpose is to discourage corporations from buying up homes in larger numbers. That's been a trend lately around the state of Florida. And the term comes from hybrid housing models that blend single-family homes on individual lots with multifamily ownership characteristics. The bills are similar, but are not companions. And then House Bill 409 has been filed concerning the adaptive reuse of land. It's a very confusing bill. We've had a tough time understanding it. It does not have a Senate companion yet, but it would create another potential threat to industrial land, saying local governments must authorize multifamily and mixed-use residential as allowable uses in any area zoned for commercial, industrial, or mixed use when approved under a newly created Adaptive Reuse Initiative Act. We're just going to have to get back to you on this one, and hopefully it gets more clarified, because some of the provisions in there are confusing to Linda and me. And finally, the last one I'll cover right now, Senator DeSegli has filed a bill 462 in the Senate concerning the Department of Transportation. It might be a framework bill for a larger transportation bill, but this one right now, the provision that's of note would require counties to submit an annual transportation project data list to FDOT, including revenues, expenditures, project classifications, so types of projects, and any unexpended funds. And this would also allocate 6 cents per kilowatt from public electric vehicle charging stations to the State Transportation Trust Fund to help shore up some of the drop in revenues from a greater share of electric vehicles that are being used. Yeah, it will be. And then there's some other provisions in here, including setting an 18-month deadline for completing project development and environmental studies on new roads and highway expansions, and also requiring that any capacity studies for limited access highways to evaluate an elevated roadway above travel lanes as an option. So more to come on this one as it gets a House companion and potentially goes through committee review. And then you heard about the Legislative Advocacy Day on March 11th and 12th. Our board meeting is March 12th, just a reminder, but if you want to go up on March 11th, just time your return so you're not here right at 1:05. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Any questions about that or any other discussion? Okay. Just a couple of things that I wanted to point out on the upcoming events. We were talking earlier about the regional MPO effort, and the next TMA leadership group meeting is on February 21st from at 9:30. It rotates around the region, and this time it just happens to be hosted at PSTA. So it's never been more convenient to drop in and observe or participate in that meeting and learn more about the work that's being done on regional MPOs. So wanted to point that out. And then we have, I wanted to check with Tina to make sure we've confirmed that we have the board work session confirmed for March 5th.
Yes, Madam Chair, it's been confirmed for that date, March 5th from 1 to 3. I know some folks are going to be in Tallahassee. I would venture to say getting all 19 of you to agree to a work session date will be challenging, so we'll have a few folks absent. And I confirmed the meeting space yesterday. It will be at the Epicenter. So I did resend out that invite onto your calendars with the new location now.
Excellent, thank you. Did you have any other information or reminders for us today?
I just like to put a plug in for Bike Your City, which is in its 9th year. It's an event sponsored by Forward Pinellas, and this year we're going to be in the lovely city of Pinellas Park for a 7-mile bike ride. It starts at 8:30 in the morning, and it's always a great event that is well attended and really gets us out there in the communities where we serve. And also just to let you all know, because I've had some board members ask in the past, on the 17th, which is this coming Monday, the staff will be out at the Homeless Empowerment Program working in the community gardens for Community In-Service Day. And I have had some board members inquire if they were able to come out and serve with us, and absolutely you can. If that's something that you want to do, wear clothes you can get dirty.
Right, sounds good, thank you.
I'd be remiss if we don't mention the Gulf Coast Safe Streets Summit, because we have 2 of our board members who will be there. on the 13th as part of a panel to talk about safety. Again, another regional effort.
Excellent. All right, anyone else? Commissioner Eisner?
If it's okay, I wanted to bring some feedback to the board about our last meeting. We were presented with a school camera on the back of the school buses, and I did a little bit of a background search because we were presented that there was only one, I think, item. A bus driver had said that only one person had gone by. I sent a text message to Whit Blanton. In 10 months, there were 61,000 violations in Miami, Hillsborough, and Polk. In the last 3 months, there have been 26,000 tickets just in Hillsborough County, totaling $5.8 million of income. So that is why I probably said what I was going to say at that last meeting. I couldn't believe that we were sitting here listening to only one violation from one bus driver. So that's something I wanted to say. And the other comment that I have, Linda was kind enough to follow up on my request that there is no FEMA trucks or trailers that were applied in Pinellas County. She sent me a follow-up that she spoke with Pinellas County Emergency Management and Building Development, and there are 2 trailer programs that we have. One is FEMA and one is a state program. Moving to the second part, so I don't read all of this to you, trailers can only be placed on property with a single-family home or duplex in existing mobile home park or an existing vacant lot with one trailer. And as you noted at the meeting, trailers cannot be located in a flood zone or in an area with a base flood elevation of more than 18 inches. So what I had said was true. The last part was, so far there are 366 trailers that have been approved, but only one has gotten through the entire process. A few more are in the process, the permitting process. But if you read what she's written, she's now found out, Linda, that the process is so difficult to do, which is why we only have one that's been approved in all of Pinellas County. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you so much. Anyone else? All right, thank you so much, everyone. Today's meeting is adjourned.